Oksana, the lonely thief destined to be queen, finds herself at the foot of her father's hilltop keep, looking out across the long houses making up the palisaded settlement in this, to her, still foreign land of the northern raiders. And as she looks out over the awakening town, with the first light of morning bringing a modicum of activity to her father's subjects, she, not for the first nor the last time, harkens back to how she found herself in this strange place, surrounded by these strange people. And always her reflections bring her back to the first meeting with Genaha of the Khalidim, of the desert tribes of the Dust Empire, a pit fighter with whom she found herself fighting shoulder to shoulder when the forces of the Castigian theocracy invaded Tarentus, the city of thieves, the city of Oksana's birth. And always when she thinks back on her connection to the fierce, many-scarred warrior, she wonders, how could it have gone differently? Was there anything she could have done? And how had it all come to this? Hello friends, Anderson here. Welcome to Oksana, Thief, Gladiator, Queen, Part 2 of the actual play series, where we are about to kick some theocratic ass if, well, the dice favor us, and where we still have to explore through our flashback sequence that we're currently in how our prompt of a love ally has led to us and our encounter with Genaha, getting Oksana locked up by her father in among the northern raiders. So far, all we know is that the theocracy is invading and that we have been discovered by one of the officers, and that now, atop of the roof where our scene is set, that two-story house with the crenellations on top, is now going to be swarmed by theocracy soldiers climbing up, and possibly even one of those automatons, these winged animated statues made to look like grim angels swooping down on us. We have now acquired some stat blocks for Genaha, courtesy of Jakub, who left a comment and rolled the dice and determined that she's a strong one and actually hits as hard unarmed as she hits armed, courtesy of her vicious background, which means as far as her pit fighting career goes, she's probably this world's equivalent of John Jones on a maximum of picograms. Now, there are rules where we can just treat companions somewhat differently in the mechanics. We don't need a character sheet for every companion, but considering the potentially galvanizing importance of Genaha for our story, I feel like it's justified. So thanks for supplying the stat block so I don't have to do a bunch of rollies on the camera here, which admittedly just tends to slow things down. And speaking of comments, of course, let me, like, subscribe, comment, all that. Thank you. But now, to arms. In the Black Sword Hack initiative is a wisdom check, which puts us at a severe disadvantage because both of our esteemed current protagonists are not particularly wise. However, we roll regardless. If we make it, we act first. If we don't make it, we get acted upon first. I'll roll the plasticky ones with different colors just so I don't have to roll twice in a row, which means that I'll choose the blue one for Oksana and the red one for Genaha. A 9 and a 6, they both react with astounding speed and awareness and general alacrity. And as the officer's muffled shout from under the closed helmet with the angelic face carved on still echoes in the distance, the first handful of Castigian soldiers already scramble to the left and right of the house and try to come up on both sides to confront the two miscreants spying on their column from up top. And in the interim of them making their ascent, before they reach the top, Genaha, her 2 daggers clutched, looks to the left and right and makes ready to pounce, while Oksana looks around and behind, looking more for an escape route across the rooftops. And by way of a successful intelligence check, actually finds a couple of planks bridging the gap between 2 roofs behind the house of a narrow alleyway, and possibly through that makeshift, not quite a bridge, they could make it farther into the maze of passages that Tarentus is made up of and so infamous for. But first she too focuses back on the 2 sides on which now enemies are ascending, her eyes quickly darting over to the Khalidim woman next to her, and realizing that she seems more focused on the somewhat quicker climber coming up on the right, she herself makes ready to engage the enemy on the left. And before long the action erupts. The soldier, the first to the roof, drags himself up and in a quick motion tries to get on one knee and immediately pull himself up and engage with the pit fighter now flying towards him. But is he quick enough? Can it be done? We will have to make an attack roll for Genaha and see whether the ascending soldier immediately finds himself Sparta kicked off the roof again. The soldier, still in a crouch, immediately takes a flying knee to the face that Genaha times perfectly to cause maximum amount of pushback and crunch, while also using the force of the impact to herself stay on the roof and land so she can stomp downwards if need be to the next ascending soldier, as the sickening pop of the first attacker's nose cartilage heralds a arced descent that is only stopped by a clattering impact down on the cobblestones that takes him out of the fight once and for all. Now what Genaha did here was a special action that you can do with your attack action, and it was a shove in a way to use gravity to her advantage, because, you know, Isaac Newton is the deadliest son of a bitch, not only in space but on Doomed Alissar as well. But using these special actions means we have to roll our Doom die, which is a usage die. On a 1 and 2 it degrades to a die 4 to the next lower die tier, and if we run out of Doom die we are doomed, which means we roll at a disadvantage on just about everything. Let's roll a die 6 to see if our Doom die for Genaha decays. We roll a 6, it does not. And we actually get 2 combat actions, which we can also do the same action twice. So Genaha could now attack down again on the next climber, but that would be another unarmed attack action, which would mean we have to roll a Doom die yet again. But since it is the action that seems to make the most sense, I think that's what she's going to do. So let's first attack. That's a 4, that's a successful attack, unarmed. Doom die says another 6, no decay. But I'm not using this as a shove action, I'm just basically having her stomp down on the head that comes up, which means we just roll the regular die 8 damage now. Ooh, that's an 8. Okay. I think we can subtract 1 for the helmet that this next ascending soldier is no doubt wearing. However, since I'm matching the levels here, and I assume this is a first level creature, the sort of guideline HP for a first level opponent on the fly is 5, which means the stomp kick does a hell of a number, not only on this person's skull under the helmet, but also dislodges the climbing movement, and another one falls down and crashes down on the pavement, never to get up again. In the meantime, Oksana also takes a bead on the first ascender on her side, and as the soldier pulls themselves up, leans forward towards them and makes a sort of motion with her hand as if she was throwing a fistful of sand their way, while under her breath whispering a soft incantation, and we roll a sorcery check. We have to roll under 12, we roll 11, that is successful, and now our ascending soldier finds themselves in the unenviable position of pulling themselves upright and losing consciousness, which causes them to topple backwards and go for a splat. As a second one, of course, immediately pops up behind them, and Oksana gets her second action, which is stabby to the face, which ineffectually glances off the helmet. And looking down, seeing that more and more of the droves of soldiers are now untangling themselves from the parade column marching down the streets. And do we get a maybe a flapping of mechanical wings from down there already? Let's ask the Oracle. On a die 6 roll, the 5 and upwards is a yes, and the 2 and below is a no. That's a 3, which is a no, but, and that is effectively that the attention of the automaton has now been invoked, and while it still lingers right now, gauging whether this roof even supports its weight, it is already crouching down and will no doubt engage in the next combat round. And since Genaha cleared her side of the ascent and the other soldiers are still busy coming up again, I think it's only Oksana who has to now defend herself with a player-facing dodge roll against a shoulder of the soldier that is now half on the roof, coming up, trying to bulldoze her out of the way while at the same time bringing down the sword. We roll a 10, which is under the dexterity of 13. That is quite a high value that Oksana has there. So she evades, but now there is a soldier on the roof with 2 more coming up and 2 more on the other side. And I think the 2 combatants on either side of the roof so shoot each other glance, and the glance is a kind of a blind oh shit look, because there is effectively no beating back that tide. So they'll probably have to make a run for it. Initiative persists throughout combat, so now it's our turn again. We don't have to roll for each round. And I think to buy some time, Genaha waits for the hand of the next ascending soldier to come up and grab the roof's support beam on the side, which is a wooden beam, and to try and ram her dagger through the hand to pin it in place and kind of get the soldier stuck there as a delaying tactic sort of thing. So let's roll an attack. That's a 2, that's a success, and with an audible crunch, the dagger goes in. There is a yelp of pain and a hissed, "This is no use, we have to go," as the Khalidim warrior already rushes off towards that rickety connecting, not quite a bridge between the 2 roofs, which also means we only have 1 dagger for Genaha now. I have actually spent Oksana's equipment budget already off camera, and Black Sword uses a sort of a flexible pricing system, which means you roll a die 6 and multiply it by 1, 10, or 100, depending on what article on the pricing table you roll for. But since I didn't find the idea of rolling for prices on camera for a bunch of times particularly exciting, I just took the kind of the halfway point of the price points and made everything costs as if I'd rolled a 3, which means we have some gear, but right now that's not particularly important. Just wanted to point it out in case you're wondering why there is stuff on the character sheet now. Anyway, Oksana has the same idea of causing a delay, and again mutters some words under her breath, an invocation, sort of a kind of thing, and then casts Withering to turn the armor-clad soldier ascending now half on the roof into a 90-year-old's strength equivalent. That is another casting success, and that works. And while she is kind of addressing her incantation in that direction, almost offhandedly, as dexterous as she is, she slices her dagger in the direction of the assailant that is currently still on the roof with her. And we use our dex to attack, even though regularly you would use strength due to our sword mastery. I think it was, we use dex to attack, and that way we can hit now. Otherwise we would have failed. We wouldn't have rolled under 11, but we did roll under 13. So we do our weapon damage of die 6. This could actually mean that the opponent still survives. We roll a 5. That's kind of an edge case. It could be that the opponent survives with a very low hit point. Actually, considering that we have started with our constitution score, and I'd say like an average constitution for a regular level 1 person might be around 9 or 10. Let's just roll a die 10 and see if we hit a 4 or below, in which case our attacker is dead, and if it's anything above 5, including 5 with the armor that they're wearing, they're still alive. Roll a 1. This was a drafted soldier with perhaps a bit of a deficient performance in the physical realm. So the blood fountain erupts as the dagger finds its target in the crack between the helmet and the armor's collar, and now they have bought themselves some time. On both sides, the ascent as they sort of hold on to these jutting beams that come out of the wall, or the front wall. That's like the one point they can come up. It's now blocked by one soldier being pinned with a dagger, the other one like having an onion on their belt, trying to explain to them that everything was better in the past and stuff like that. And Oksana and Genaha make a retreat towards that wooden beam as the massive metallic form of a grim angel statue lands in front of them or behind them. I guess maybe the automaton couldn't really see what's going up from below, so probably kind of targeted the roof for a jump, which I'm assuming is more of a jump. I don't think they actually really fly, but it's like more for show with the wings and everything. They do flap, but I don't think it's particularly likely that they're actually flying. So there's a tremendous leap from below. And I find it likely that the automaton targeted the roof where the initial fighting was happening. And there is a mechanic for this, which means we can roll 1 die more, and if it's likely and probably, we just take the highest result of the question. So we roll 2 die 6. We roll 2 6s. We'll keep the highest of the 6s. Now, there was a bit of a lingering doubt whether the roof is actually supporting all of this weight, especially with the automaton crashing down on it. Let's flip the 2 die 6 scenario and make it like a possibility that the automaton immediately crashes through the roof again, but we make it unlikely, so we roll the 2 die 6 and keep the lowest. Are they crashing through the roof? No. So with a judder, the roof vibrates, and this daunting shape, twice the size of a person, rests crouched there for a moment before this grim angel mask turns towards the 2 receding figures and makes to go after them. And I think what we can do here is construct a kind of a chase outset scenario where the goal, I feel like, is for both Oksana and Genaha to make it across the other roof and down, which they can accomplish by jumping into something soft like a midden or a haystack or something of the sort, like some annex building that has a sort of reaches up sort of a halfway point where they can use as a stair to step down. We can kind of infer that in the City of Thieves this kind of stuff definitely exists, but they need to make it there before they're being caught. And I think right now the Grim Angel is sort of 2 successes on a chase roll behind. I think we can also be a bit adaptive. I think the first chase roll could be Dex because they have to make it across this rickety Nother Bridge, and the second one is more like Constitution as they sort of push themselves to maintain almost a sprinting pace. However, that angel thing statue exists in the bestiary here, and it is a level 6 creature. I feel like we should kind of reflect that by subtracting the level difference from our roll, as nasty as that seems, but the thing is also huge and makes huge leaps and strides, so I think it's fairly realistic to go on a -5 roll. Maybe we can give we roll Oksana's dex, which is better, and assume that Genaha is along for the ride and manages to keep up. So I feel we should have 2 successes to manage to get down into this webwork of alleyways and streets, which are also kind of leaning very close to one another, and it may be something where the angel has trouble following because the passages are just not wide enough, so we can kind of disappear in the back alleys. Or actually, is there because it's the city of thieves, of course, there have to be underground passages. There has to be almost like a sub-city which is composed of sewers and passageways and old catacombs and stuff. So surely this is there. Yes, we roll this with an advantage because it's very probably there. That's no matter what this die is, it's a hell yes. So hell yes there is, and the hell of the yes is that the entrance is actually really near. It's like an old well in a hidden backyard that Oksana or Genaha probably knows about. Not probably in this case, but it's like a yes or no. Does one of them already know about it, or do they need to spot it? Another 6, they know about it, and they both know about it, so they have this other moment of sort of unspoken, I know exactly where you're running for, that is maybe also the basis of their shared relationship, that they have this blind understanding from the first minute that they meet each other. And so we have to now pace across the rooftops, which we do by rolling a dexterity check -5. 2. Okay, our 2 beleaguered anti-heroines hoof it across the roof, and without slowing down, one foot in front of the other, dexterously make it across the creaking planks of wood between the 2 rooftops, hurtling towards the edge of the adjacent building, like a warehouse that is slightly domed on the roof, so it's slippery. They're trying to keep their balance there again, and they push the pace as they hear the thundering of the automatons jump across the gap. It's obviously not going to run across the wooden beams. So we're making a constitution check -5. This time, I think they're equal. Yeah, okay, so we have to get under a 6, I think. Ugh. 16! The automaton catches up, and it was all for nothing. Not quite, but they are not gaining ground. They are in fact losing ground. So with one more failure, the automaton catches up, but with one more success, they reach the edge and can make the leap down. So we roll Constitution again. 5. Okay, so with a ragged breath, the both reach the edge of the building. They look down, they see a beam of a crane jutting down, which for a practiced thief like Oksana is good enough. She bounds down, lands on it elegantly, grabs the rope of the crane and just lets go, sliding down as Genaha simply jumps and lands, overtaking Oksana on her slower descent, rolling with a grunt of pain, but ignoring the, for the purpose of the rules, non-existent damage, as the form of the automaton draws up to the edge, and looking down, seeing this sort of very narrow landing patch down in the alley as the buildings come closer and closer, and kind of predicting that there's probably no good way for it to pursue its charges, who are now scuttling through a narrow passage into a backyard, and without breaking stride, bounding over the low brick wall of an old abandoned well that is dominating this small courtyard. And I think here we need to kind of tie it back to our initial prompt we're answering, where Genaha, again now overtaking Oksana, jumps first, and Oksana following behind. They both tumble down, Genaha landing on her back, Oksana crashing down right on top of her, and there's this sort of brief tension-laden moment where they're both like nose to nose, one of them looking up, one of them looking down. They meet their eyes before Genaha grunts, pushing Oksana now to the other side and being the one that looks down, because I think she doesn't particularly appreciate the dynamic. And this lasts for maybe another very tension-filled second before the Khalidim pushes herself off and grunts towards her new companion, and they both rush off into the underground passages to, well, find shelter and safety somewhere. And now, since we're in a flashback, I think it's time to help us along with another prompt and actually tie ourselves into how the hell do they go from this to the Northern Raiders territory. So with the invasion there, we got the prompt that there was like a guerrilla war now breaking out in the city, and that the city of thieves doesn't have a standing army, and that they kind of neglected to hire the mercenaries. And I had a bit of a think about this. What I think is the reason that for the initial couple of months maybe, so we have a bit of a connection building between Oksana and Genaha, which also then by the time we meet them again, this tension between them has already blossomed into an absolutely ironclad relationship. We need to kind of figure out why did they stay. And I think from the perspective of the City of Thieves, it makes sense that maybe it's difficult to become like an officially licensed thief. I think that makes some sort of sense. And I think that Oksana never was one. She has this sorcery talent. I feel like there may have been a connection to like a sorcerer of some kind that she maybe did the dirty work for in exchange for being taught a few things. And Genaha, having escaped here somehow from her previous pit fighter indenture or enslavement, whatever was the real background there. And maybe the impetus for them to initially give it a go and fight the theocracy is that the Thieves Guild has dangled out the carrot that whoever answers the call to arms and substantially helps driving the theocracy from the city will be granted the opportunity to become a fully fledged thief once everything's settled down again. Now, are they going to be good for their word? Who knows? They're thieves, probably not. But it doesn't really matter for our two here, because they are in fact losing. Like, the Thieves Guild is not able to substantially push back against the invaders, and the theocracy is slowly but surely occupying the various city quarters. There's like the most seedy neighborhood that even the Thieves Guild didn't have under control. They've now opened their gates to the like official power structure of the city, and there's like a whole kind of cutthroat subculture existing there now, where Oksana and Genaha are also laying low, probably in the underground passages under there, sleeping in like old catacombs surrounded by bones. And during one such like downtime periods, maybe like 3-4 months into the budding occupation, as they're sharing their rotten straw, fur-covered midden that they're sleeping on, they're having this sort of hushed pillow conversation, mine is a pillow, where the more realistic Genaha flat out says that in her opinion there is no point in staying here anymore. They need to get out of the city. They need to go somewhere.
Well, where would we go? I've only ever known this place. Unless you want to set out and find my father, the king of mighty everywhere. But of course, every whore's bastard has a king for a father.
And I think that's sort of Oksana's understanding of her parentage, that her mother has basically made it up that her father was some kind of an important man who visited the city and then screwed off again. And she doesn't really know that it happens to be true. And maybe with the bits of information that is now revealed to this well-traveled pit fighter, maybe she can connect the dots. So I want to give ourselves like an oracle prompt of a theme and a subject to see how do we actually figure out that the Northern Raiders is where we want to go. Now the Dark Gods Oracle are again asking for a D66 roll twice. We read the red one first. 26, celebration. 23, family. Celebration, family. So whatever is the indicator of the revelation that Oksana's father was actually an important person to the Northern Raiders, and now is perhaps even more so than he was back then. Presumably visiting the city, he maybe wasn't even like the chief or the jarl or whatever it is yet, and was maybe just the son. And I'm thinking like celebration, family, did they get married actually? Was he genuine and didn't really lead Oksana's mother on and had to sort of disappear out of circumstances above his own power and left behind something as a sort of a token that Oksana's mother has always hung on to, and always had these grand designs of leaving the city. And there is something here, something that proves that Oksana is part of the family of her father, and is so rightfully. She's not actually a bastard, she's a legitimately born daughter, because they actually had a family celebration, like they had a wedding. So maybe we assume that when Oksana makes fun of her mother's ideas of, my father was a king among the Northern Raiders, but so was the father of every other bastard born to a whore in the City of Thieves, the Khalidim just perks up, and having been among the Northern Raiders, asks maybe,
"What do you know of your father?"
How do they kind of show their family allegiance? Like, do they have kind of a special, like an item or something? Like, did she get like a token, like a rune stone or something? Let's ask the Oracle. Did she get a token, a rune stone or something? Hell no. Okay, so it's not a physical object as such. It's something else. It's maybe I don't know, the first thing that comes to my mind in a weird way is sort of this sort of possessiveness of you're now part of the clan, is like a kind of a branding, but not in a like, cattle sort of way, but maybe we can put like a more positive spin on it. Oh, maybe it's like taking a bit from like the idea of like a tartan, like where every clan has their own pattern. Maybe it's a special kind of not a branding, but a tattoo, like in lieu of a wedding band. They really engrave it upon their skin, and of course it's like on pain of death. If you're not really legitimate, like you can't just get this done and pretend, hey, I'm like, the relative of the Herdeberde clan or whatever it is. But maybe that's what Oksana's father arranged for her mother, that one of his band of companions was the shamanistically inclined, and there's a kind of a mythological element to the whole tattooing process, and that maybe we have a situation here where Oksana has kept this pattern sort of copied out on a scrap of paper, and that's sort of the only real thing that she has to remind her of her father, because her mother was always talking about this. She doesn't have the tattoo herself, how would she? But she has the pattern, the imagery, and that's what she now takes out and shows to Genaha, and explains that her mother had this bestowed upon her by her father to prove that she's part of the family now during their wedding celebration, and always held out hope that she could one day travel to the Northern Raiders, but then perhaps like, I don't know, the consumption took her when she was like, when Oksana was just a small child, and she only ever held on to this as her one connection to a part of her family that she never knew. And for all she knows, this is complete crap and like a made up symbol, but she kind of cherishes it. And now does Genaha know this iconography, because maybe she has been a pit fighter for the Northern Raiders? I think not very much a maybe, but a probably. So has Genaha been a pit fighter among the Northern Raiders and knows what this symbol is? Yes, she recognizes it and confirms it for Oksana.
"Whoever is your father, maybe king, maybe warrior, this clan symbol is written true."
And this gives Oksana pause, and she kind of looks somewhat wistfully off in the distance, and feeling very little like connection and loyalty to a man she's never met, but having been brought up as she has in a city of thieves, she muses,
Maybe he's rich?
And with that, maybe like a plan starts to take shape, sort of a confidence scam with a basis in reality, where she can show up as the long-lost daughter to scope out the place of whatever her father owns and then rob him blind. And that's how they end up in the Northern Raiders. Maybe that's how this happens. Maybe. We'll figure it out next time. So thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you then, and bye for now.